Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Christian Reeve Podcast. Today's guest is the author and co-founder of the Mitchell Thorpe Foundation from all the way from South California. Her name is Beth Thorp. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hey, thank you for having me this morning or evening for you, morning for me.
Yeah, I'm very used to this now that well, it's weird because I have a lot of guests from the UK, but I also have a lot of guests from America. And I kind of just, I don't know, I'm so used to the whole change in time zones thing that I don't even really think about it. But it's a good point. Like, we are obviously different parts of the world, different, just, yeah, I don't know. It's amazing, actually, to be fair. It's amazing to be able to reach people like yourself all the way across the globe and be able to share your story, and never fails to blow my mind, to be honest. But yeah, I fumbled the intro, so I do apologize for that. You are the author of this book, and we can see just in the background for those watching the YouTube version of this or the Spotify version, the book is called ANEW Creation. So in your own words, what can you tell us about this book, and what can people learn from it?
There's a lot of good things in here. A New Creation is it's a true story about my family, our love for each other, and baseball has a huge component to it. You can see the little picture of my son on the front cover. My oldest son, Mitchell, came down with an undiagnosed mysterious illness that took my family across the nation looking for answers. After 5 years, with still no understanding of the cause, Mitchell passed away, which was a very hard thing that we had to go through.
Sorry for your
Um,
loss.
yes, I know. But through that, um, we faced, many trials, obviously, through it, and our faith was tested. Ultimately, we found hope and purpose. We took that pain to purpose by creating the Mitchell Thorpe Foundation. And what that is we support families with children with life-threatening illnesses, diseases, and disorders by providing financial, emotional, spiritual, and resource support in their day of need. So that's what came out of it. So here we are 14 years later. Um, it's amazing to see what we're faith-based people. So it was amazing for us to see what God took the tragedy and spoke to my spirit deep within me, saying, "This is not the end. This is the beginning." And my deepest pain and grief, I didn't really understand what he meant by that until my husband, who played for the Los Angeles Dodgers, he was a pitcher back in the day. He coached two boys here locally who also played baseball, and they were suffering from cancer. One had Hodgkin's lymphoma, the other non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, both families trying to make ends meet. And we know how hard and devastating the walk is. And he specifically heard really down deep in his spirit that, we need to form a bridge, like a foundation to help other families going through and through. So he came home to tell me that. And I said, he said, we should start a foundation. And I said, well, you want to do, I said, what? I said, we don't know anything about starting a foundation, but, we gave it over to the Lord. We got on our hands and knees, committed it to him. And we never looked back. We gave up our previous careers to do this line of work. And it's been very rewarding in a sense. I think it was also a sense of healing for us along our journey too. So it's a really beautiful, inspirational story about love, faith, perseverance, family, courage, community, forgiveness. It's about healing and restoration. And it's really us being a witness for Christ through our journey, even though at times we felt that God had abandoned us. So during those times, which happens to people sometimes, that's why they lose and walk away from their faith when when tragedy hits or when something overcomes them that they can't handle. So it's so important. The book kind of talks about having strong faith and what does that mean. So it helps build people with that. So faith doesn't always take you out of the problem, but faith takes you through the problems. So, and faith doesn't always take away the pain, I tell people, but faith always gives you the ability to handle the pain. And also, if you have strong faith, it doesn't always take you out of the storms and chaoses of life, but it'll help you kind of calm the storms around you by having a firm, strong foundation that you don't crumble. Because this is something that we walk through. It devastates a lot of families, and most of them statistically It's usually over 50% end in divorce or separation due to the stress level of caring for a terminally ill child, or they just can't handle it because of the bills and then the stressors of it all. So we kind of wrap our arms around these families and let them know they're not alone. And we walk that with them. And through the foundation, we provide that. So we're very happy to say we had a 100% success rate in keeping families together and not end in divorce or separation. So that is really a feather in our cap for that.
It's an amazing story. And I've had a fair few guests over the last 2 years who've had sort of similar stories. I wouldn't say the same stories, but like similar stories in that they faced obstacles, just like yourself, really, really tough stuff that, to be honest, I'm not particularly a religious person. I go back and forth, but one thing I think that is really important that exists in life in general, both in religion and outside of it, is, as you put it, like faith, belief in whatever you believe in. That's really tested when, especially when people pass away and in circumstances that don't always kind of make sense. And I suppose you kind of go through all different phases of it, don't you? It's like you kind of first you question, like, did I do enough? Did we do enough? Is this a failure of society? Is this a failure of the systems we have in place? Is this, yeah, if you believe in, if religion's your thing, is this God punishing me? Is this, there's so many questions. The thing that I wanted to ask you next, which I'm kind of fascinated by, is when this first happens, how do you and your partner kind of, I don't want to say process this, but like how do you kind of get to the point where you kind of decide, like, okay, I want to continue looking? Was it because you still hadn't sort of had the answers yet, and it was kind of, because I know you said that it's part of the healing process, but given that you were kind of doing this for about 5 years, your son passes away, and then it's like, okay, did you, was it kind of, were you looking kind of to just keep moving forward so that you find that answer, and then maybe at the end of that there will be something else? Or was it just kind of like, we just have to keep going because we have to keep going, kind of thing? Like, I guess my question to you is like, how did you initially find the strength to keep going? Like, what was involved in that decision making process, and how did you keep going?
Absolutely. Well, that is the strength. And again, going back to our faith, because I was curled up in a ball, not wanting to be on the planet anymore after he passed, because a part of me and my husband, I have to speak for him, as a whole, part of us died when he died, right? So it was, the pain in your heart is just so excruciating. Because like someone couldn't take the knife out of my heart, stop the bleeding. And it finally came to that point when I was curled up in that ball, when I heard that still small voice. When you understand who God is and the Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and you walk in that realm, he will speak to your spirit, because we are made of the physical body, mind, body, spirit, right? So there's always a way of that spirit in you. That's how we are, that God created us to be, to long to search for something more. That there had to be something that came from this. And at the time I was in my deepest pain and grief. So there was nothing else I was thinking of except the sorrow. And then until I heard that still small voice within me that illuminated my mind saying, this is not the end. This is just the beginning. And I sat up and I in my bed, I was like, what does that mean? This is not the end. It feels like the end. I don't want to be here anymore. I was in such grief, because grief is real and grief is hard, and it's a hard thing to walk through and overcome. And for your audience, they say the deeper the love for a person, the harder the grief is, right? So, especially if it's your child or, anyone that you love deeply, it takes you longer to recover. So it was 5 years of trying to find answers for him. And then 2 years of, I have to say, coming out of it. So for me, it was not just an overnight thing. It's a process, and it's a process of taking one step at a time, the next indicated thing. And for my husband to come home and hear a similar message saying that, we should do something to help other families going through what we went through. And then it kind of came full circle. And I said, oh man, is that what God meant to say Is that what he means to help us through this time of pain and grief? And it literally felt like he wrapped his arms around us and carried us along the way. And when I look back at it now, I can see so clearly the fingerprints of God through it all 14 years later, and all the children and the families we've touched, all the families we've brought hope and light in the darkness. And that is our mission. I guess we were chosen, and we are to bring the light in the darkness in a very difficult time for people. So that's kind of what the book, it talks about, those inspirational truths, those rich, deep promises that God speaks to us. It also talks about how my son was speaking to us beyond the veil of heaven, which I write about that after he passed. And I documented many of this stuff. So there was in photographs. So each chapter has lots of photographs. It's an easy read, and people are like, wow, I couldn't put it down. So that's a beautiful thing to hear for an author. To hear that from people who are reading it, from non-believers to believers in whatever you believe in. It's just a story, a beautiful story of faith and an encouragement and hope, and how to persevere through trials.
One of the themes that your book explores is this idea of the ripple effect. Could you kind of expand on that a little bit and explain what you mean by that?
Exactly. Well, the ripple effect is just that, how one life, I say on the back of the book, how the power of one life can cause a ripple effect that goes on and on and on to touch so many different lives. So you don't know, like yourself, Christian, with your podcast, you don't know who you're touching, who you're reaching, and you might never really know the implications of it.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time. And we have touched, like you said, with the foundation, we started with one child at a time, one family at a time. And you just start, it's like throwing that pebble in, or the stone in the pond, and watch it just ripple out of the ripple effect it has on others. And, quite frankly, people are looking for hope. We live in a very hopeless, sometimes society. There's a lot of, you look around and all the things that are happening around the world, it's like people are like just clinging for some sense of hope of something. And that's
will
what we hope to do and achieve through our story.
I will interject just one on that topic. Like I totally get where you're coming from. Yeah, especially now. Like I remember when I first started doing this podcast, I wasn't really sure what I was doing, and then about a year and a half in, I got some of the responses of what people were sort of thought of about it, and what they liked, etc., and disliked. And it wasn't until people started saying like, "Oh, hey, yeah, this particular episode inspired me, or this got me through like a dark time or whatever." And I hadn't really sat and really thought about that before. I was like, oh, I didn't really, because I mean, it's one thing to imagine like people, checking out your podcast or reading your book, but it's like when people actually reach out to you, like take the time to say, hey, I checked this out. This is what it did for me. This is how it helped me. It kind of blows your mind a little bit. You're like, wow, okay. So there is power in this, and there is some purpose in doing this, because I mean, when I first started doing this podcast, I just started it because I wanted to do a podcast, right? And then over the course of the last couple of years, it's kind of grown and it's developed into what I like to kind of say is like, inspiring stories, inspiring topics, stuff that gets people thinking, gets people, feeling a range of different emotions. And it's always different every time, and I love it. I love the whole process. But when you start thinking about your effect on others with everything, not just like with creative endeavors, but just like every single day, like just being nice to someone.
Exactly.
Like you never know like what someone's going through or what someone's dealing with, or you just have no idea. So it's like just try your best to kind of just be a decent human being, I guess.
And no, that's true. I mean, that's what, if the world was like that, if everyone
Right.
just got out of themselves for a moment, we live in this me society, and get out of themselves a little bit more and just looked out around them of what's going on, to touch, and like you said, be kind to another person. Um, volunteer at a shelter, or feed the hunger. Just step out of yourselves for a little bit, of just to be that servant, what we call that servant's heart, or that servant leader, that you'll start to see yourself to change. Trust me, it'll we felt that when we had Mitchell was still with us and he was still alive, and people heard about our story, and they knew, even with good insurance, well, you don't have this problem in the UK, but even with good and medical insurance here in the United States, we still were left with the $100,000 medical bill to pay off. And it's just like, that's with good insurance. So it nearly almost bankrupts families here. And the community came out and heard about our story, and I had two friends say, we really want to help your family out, and we want to do a walkathon. I said, you a walk, a what? So they're like, yeah, we want to get people out and, and donate and help you pay off. And so I'm telling you, Christian, she said, you don't have to worry about anything. You just show up with Mitchell. It'd be nice for him if he's healthy enough to be there. And so he was. We wheeled him out there, and there was like 600 to 700 people there. Some people we never even knew. And
Wow.
they raised $70,000 to help us pay that bill off. I mean, it forever changes you. And you're like, we felt like that. Wow, one day we hope to pay this forward. And sure enough, we were able to do that. I mean, that's the beauty of community. And if the world can have stronger communities to look out for one another, wow, what a nice place the world can be. And but we live in such a place where it's not always nice, right? There's evil. I mean, there's things. It's human nature of freedom of choice to make choices that might not be good for mankind. And I kind of look at it as a sense of being good to others, and I just feel that it's just for me and my God-given right to make someone's day a little bit brighter. That's important to us, and that's what we're able to accomplish through the foundation. We were able to accomplish it through the book. It's just interesting. Yesterday, I was talking to a film producer, and they're now interested in taking this book to film. So I'm like, oh my goodness, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. The book just got released really just 2 months ago, the end of
Oh
June.
wow, congrats.
So it's just got released. So you can purchase ANEW Creation wherever books are sold online, or wherever, or you can go to my website anewcreation.org, and I can personally sign one and get one off to you. But yeah, it's a beautiful story. It is rich with it'll take you on a journey. I'll say that. So the producers that were reading the script, they were like, they're reading the book. They just text me the other day. Says we ripped through your book, is what they said. And then all they said was, wow, exclamation point. And
Yeah.
that has really made me felt good, because, as an author, you're hoping to move people. You're hoping them to take them from a place of, like that we were talking about, getting out of yourself and into, what's really important in life. People come to that point in times in their life is what is my purpose? What am I here for, really? And those questions, those are just like I call almost spirit. That's that spirit inside you of, why am I here? And what can I do? And some people feel like they are worthless and they don't have a plan or a purpose, but everyone has a purpose. Find the passions that ignite you, I would say to your audience. And when they say that, what makes you feel alive? That's the first place. When you think of things you like to do, or anything that's come across your path that kind of lights you up, makes you feel alive, that is probably, I would say, the first step or the first process of to look into that deeper and to explore it.
I think it always kind of comes down to finding something that's bigger than yourself and moving towards that. You know,
Exactly.
it's like I do think it's always important to take care of you and your own first and foremost. You gotta take care of yourself, but at the same time, if everything that you do only serves you, it's kind of a thankless life. Like one thing I've realized in more recent years is that like everything is better when it's shared, no matter what it is. Like just with friends, family, whatever. Like and to make the most of those experiences. Just to really kind of be in the moment and like put your phone down, be away from it, and just be there and enjoy it. Enjoy the richness and beauty that life can be. And don't get me wrong, like there'll be people listening to this that will be annoyed, that'll be angry at the world, and I totally understand. I've been there. I'm sure you've been there as well, and it's like it's difficult. It's not easy to kind of get yourself to that point where you can keep going moving forward. I mean, I think I look at it like it's a test. It's like trying, they say that humanity and everything that you discover about yourself is the thing, is something that you discover when you are at your lowest, when you're at your most tested, or like when things get hardest, that's when you discover like who you really are, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what they say, at least. And it's
Yes, well, that is true. It's when you are tested, and in our case, we're faith people. So we're God, where are you? Why aren't you healing our son? How come we didn't get the miracle that we were hoping for? And, on our hands or knees. And it's human nature to do that. But ultimately, at the day, I know he was with us. He brought people to us along our journey. And I just had to keep in his word, because for me and my husband, it was everything to keep our strength and not to be frightened and fearful. So our big mantra was Joshua 1:9 in the Bible verse, where God commanded Joshua before he went out to battle. And he says, have I not commanded you to be strong and courageous? Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So that was, even when my son was battling, his strength and courage, I kept saying, Mitch, you are the strongest young man I've ever known. You're making people and others stronger around us who have witnessed what you've gone through and what we're going through as a family. And it was not an easy walk, trust me, because it was 5 years in, and of doing is like you're in the battlefield day in and day out. And it took 2 years of healing, and it never really goes away, but I still feel them. But I'm at a place now where, I can find the joy again in life, where before I couldn't see the joy. I couldn't see the light of day. I didn't want to face people, that point in life. And now, again, through finding that from pain to purpose. And believe me, this was never on our radar. I was in a totally different industry, and my husband was too. But it changed. There's something that shifts, that changes you. And for us, my husband and I, for us, it was more of an eternal significance of doing something that had more significance on the planet than what we were doing, if that makes any sense. So the people we meet, again, we just kind of bring that joy, even in the midst of the darkest things and the night, giving people that hope and how to hang on and how to walk through it, how to be an overcomer. There's a chapter I write in the book, Overcomer. So how to overcome obstacles, how to overcome. Because, yeah, it was shortly after, I'd say not shortly, it was 6 years after I ended up with a 5 centimeter brain tumor.
Oh,
that
wow.
was removed, and which left me paralyzed on the whole right side of my body. And I didn't think I'd be able to walk again, but it took 6 months of intense therapy, 5 days a week, in and out of learning to lift my hand, to feed myself, to walk again. So it was a process. So again, there are many things that people go through, and you never know what they're going through, but to come out of it and still know that I can do in my work, in my world, is God's work, is touching others through what we've gone through. So people have told me that if your faith is not tested, it can't be trusted, right? So I couldn't walk into these hospital rooms or talk to families if I didn't go through all the stuff that we went through of how to get through it. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, by no means can I relate, but I can say that I've faced some difficult times in life. Some who am I kidding? Yeah, some tough stuff. But at the same time, like I relate to that concept of like you kind of come out the other side, and then you start breathing again and thinking, and
Yes.
that's when the lessons are learned, isn't it? And
Yes, it's true. There was part of it too for us, the healing process. I get into the book of, men have a harder time expressing. So my husband had, harder time with it. But we went through this whole healing session, and
Mm.
it started with forgiveness. I mean, that was the first place. Forgiving all the doctors that couldn't find answers, forgiving people and who said things they shouldn't have said, family members that did things that they shouldn't have done. It's all that keeps building up and building up, and you have to release it. You have to let it go. You have to let it down. You can't carry it, because if you carry it, it just manifests in you, and then you end up with sickness and disease. So you have to learn to forgive in order to take that next step to move forward into the restoration.
For people that are going for a similar thing right now, and they're at that place where they're kind of angry, frustrated, is there any particular advice you could give to people that would sort of steer them in the right direction?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't. Everyone going through something differently.
Mm-hmm.
Just to speak to the masses, I would first and say, find someone you trust, that you can share your heart with. Um, if it's a professional counselor, I would say maybe you need that. If it's a spiritual counselor, maybe you need that. If it's just a friend that you trust in their wisdom to talk to, that's the first place. You just have to start expressing what you're feeling, what you're going through. And sometimes you're in such deep pain, such deep grief, you can't even have the words to speak. Like I had nothing. I was just in the deepest pain and grief, where I needed someone to help walk my husband through this exercise of forgiveness. And I didn't even know really what that was about until I went through it, and they took us through it.
Were you still working when sort of immediately after everything? Like, was that
No, I wasn't. The foundation wasn't formed yet.
okay?
I wasn't. I had my own private business prior to Mitchell's passing. I was in the fashion industry, really, and I
Right.
was a stylist,
Cool.
and I styled many people on different photo shoots, and so it was a whole different world that I was in.
Right.
And so yeah, so no, that was the shift I was talking about when I went through that healing session with this woman. I woke up the next day totally transformed, and I looked at my husband in his eyes, and I said, I don't want to do anything else on this planet unless it has eternal significance. And for me, I said, the enemy messed with the wrong mama and papa bear, and I'm pissed. And I'm going to, so it kind of fired me. I don't know. I can't explain where it came from. It's the spirit that ignited my spirit once again. And at the time, I didn't know what that was yet still. Right. And again, the beautiful thing the book talks about, how God never wastes a tragedy, and he knows how to take people in a tragedy and take it and draw people toward him. If you're willing, you have to be a willing participant. He's a gentleman. He's not going to force anyone to do what he doesn't want you to do, but you have to be willing in your heart. So I've had to speak to a lot of people here. Sometimes they've asked me to speak to people who are going through grief and
Mm.
stages of grief and how to overcome it. And, it really, and grief can be in many forms. Grief of losing maybe a divorce, maybe a job, maybe again, losing a loved one. Grief comes in many different forms of losing something of value to you. There's a process of healing from all that. And it could be losing a business that you started and put all your heart into, and it's a loss. And COVID and the whole pandemic turned everyone's lives upside down, and businesses were lost and they lost their income. And that's a huge sense of loss. So loss comes in many forms.
It's amazing stuff. Sorry, I find myself kind of lost in these stories sometimes, and just inspired. Really, really amazing stuff. What have been the kind of the biggest success stories as a result of your work? Because I know that you kind of meet a lot of different people, and you're sort of traveling constantly and spreading word about your experiences and everything that you've gone through, and trying to sort of spread this kind of message. But has there been anyone that's kind of got in contact with you as a result, and
Oh,
achieved great
yes.
things as a result? Like, could you share some of those stories?
Oh, there's a lot. There's one that comes to mind. It was like our third year into starting the foundation, and this young family came to us, and their daughter was born with several kind of defects. She wasn't able to hear. She wasn't a candidate for a cochlear implant. She says there's a very well-known doctor in Italy who does ABI, which is auditory brain implants
Okay.
for children. Here in the United States at the time, it was not approved for children 12 and under. Only in Europe, this was a kind of a cutting edge thing. And they wanted their daughter to try to hear sounds as at a younger, and not wait till she's 12 years old, right? Parents go to the ends of the earth to try to find things to help their kiddos. And she says, well, how can the foundation help us? I said, well, what does that mean? What's involved with all this? She says, well, we'd have to go to Italy. Our insurance won't cover it. The operation is like $65,000, plus 4 months stay there. And I'm thinking to myself, as she's rattling all this off, I'm going, okay, we're not a bank, but I said,
Yeah.
well, first of all, I said, how big is your network of friends and family and community? Because we hold our walkathon. We do it every year. It's our warrior spirit 5K run walk every year. And we have team pages up for all these children we're helping. I said, how big is your network? Because it's going to take a village and maybe even a country to get this money raised. It's a campaign. And sure enough, fast forward, they were able to raise pretty close to that amount, 65, a little bit more, got her over to have this procedure done. And not just herself, they had lined up other children and doctors from around the world to witness this cutting edge procedure as they did these operations on these children there over in Italy. And now she is the first child in the United States that's had that procedure, and they have now approved it here in the United States for children 12 and under. So that, it's like the power of the parents. It's crazy, the power of what parents will do to help their kids. I've seen parents take their child's gene mapping now, which is that was just coming out when Mitchell was going through his situation, but they're taking the genomes of each children, and we partnered one family with a pharmaceutical company here who took this child's genome and have created a drug to help these children that are suffering from these neurological type disorders, and where before they were all undiagnosed, and it's like they had no hope. So it's I can tell more and more stories, but it's just amazing what can come of the resilience of parents, and you just providing them an outlet to say, hey, how big is your faith? If she's a young woman and young mom about raising that kind of money. She says, I don't know. I don't have a stronger faith like you. I said, hey, we're just going to put it out there. We're going to put it out there to the community, put it out there. You don't know. You don't know what you don't know. Does that make sense? And if you don't try, you'll never know. I said, you love your daughter? Yes. You want this badly for your daughter? Yes. Okay, pull up your bootstraps. We're getting going. This is what we're doing. So it's one of those like, okay, almost being a life coach. Let's go. Let's make it happen. Right.
Just moving it forward, did you ever discover what Mitchell's undiagnosed mysterious illness was?
No, his death certificate even said undiagnosed, undetermined.
Okay.
I mean, go figure that. There have been people over the years. I've helped a few families who had symptoms similar to Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, some people say they tell you all kinds of different things, but some say Lyme's disease, a Bartonella disease, were very hard to detect in blood work. And there's a couple children that have that right now that we're helping, and I see the similarities. But Mitchell was overcome by it. They've gotten a lot better in that area of Lyme's disease, and where the Western medicine doctors here would normally didn't know how to treat it. And so they're getting better. There's an organization specifically in San Francisco who is spearheading that kind of work. Uh, it it takes, you really, when you walk into this, you put your trust in doctors because you think they should know, right? I didn't know. I'm a mother. You're hoping that the doctors had answers to help. And when they don't, it's a rude awakening to your, I understand what it means by practicing medicine now. It's some cases are tough. There have been many cases, and I'm sure your audience, who people have been misdiagnosed or
Right.
undiagnosed, because they don't have the right answer and they're still trying to find cures for their ailments. And it's a rude awakening for us and opened our eyes to the whole world of this medical system of disease. And for me, it kind of bothers me of why there's so many more children. I've never witnessed so many children coming down with so many different cancers and this and that and the other. Then you have to kind of go back into the root cause. What's causing all this? What's causing all this? The food system supply? Is it environmental? Is something getting into the mother's womb? You can go on and on and on. That could be passed. What's causing this? So I'm always the type of person, what's driving to the root cause of things,
Right.
Because no one wants to see their children have cancer or this or that, the other. It's just devastating. It's like, I've never seen so many cases like this before. I don't know what it's like in the UK, but here in the States, um, it's prevalent.
Speaking of the world, you traveled around the world looking for answers, and I wondered, what exactly did you learn during this time, like just through traveling around and trying to look for the answers?
Hmm. Again, yes, I was. What was astonishing to me is because as a mother, we're trying to make it better. We're trying to look for answers. And when every test that was being done on him kept coming back negative, normal, you're like, but he's not normal. I mean, he'd rather be out playing baseball. He's
Mm,
laying in bed in myoclonic seizures due to pain. Is what's causing this pain. And you keep going to that answer again, that root cause. What got into my son? What happened? Where did this come from? It Couple things came out of it is an awareness, like I said, of the medical system. Two, knowing that doctors are just human. Okay, they're not they don't have all the answers, even though their egos might say that they do.
mm.
And it was so funny on some of the medical records. My husband ended up telling me, Beth, on the medical records it said beware of the mother. You know,
Oh, it
that
did.
was me, but it wasn't me. I was just holding them accountable.
Right.
You know, uh, what are you doing? What are you looking into? Brad, my husband and I we were in a research hospital here in UCLA in Los Angeles with my son for a month. We're in the library. We're trying to do research with the doctors because it's a research hospital. They recommended us going there because his case was so complicated and they couldn't figure it out. And then then the doctors, when they can't figure it out, they say, well, it's got to be all in his head. And then you're like, okay. Then I pushed the hot button, but you don't want to say anything, but you're like, you think my son wants to be in pain? I said, and I whip out a photograph of him playing baseball. He would rather be on the baseball field playing
Oh,
with his
sorry,
friends.
I misunderstood you. So they thought that maybe the kid was making it up. Is that what you
Yeah.
mean? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay.
They thought it was all in his head when they couldn't find out answers. And I said, and that's what, like I said, it really kind of pushed our hot buttons. And we're like,
Mm,
no, I think he's laying here with myoclonic seizures to pain. You think my son wants to be
right.
like this?
Yeah, yeah.
No, he wants to be out with his friends playing baseball. He wants to be back in school. He wants to, it's so interesting how that all worked. And that was a rude awakening. And then they said, well, we want to do some psych tests on him. I'm like, I said, okay, you can. I said, but if you can get him to respond, you have him
Mm,
hooked up to electrodes because of the seizures. And then they finally came back to us saying, yeah, no, it's not psychological. And then you just have to bite your tongue and you go, you think, you bite your tongue, but you have to let them do what they need to do, right? To rule things out. It was just, I don't know why we were put through all this, quite frankly. Again, I always think about it. What are the lessons I had to learn from all this? Made me much stronger, um, more questionable of things that I thought people knew the answers, but quite frankly, again, people are human. They don't know all the things. I was always hoping, my husband and I, for a doctor that looked outside the box. Um, because sometimes in medicine, doctors keep those blinders on. They only work in their line of field and they don't look outside other things. I was really hoping for a doctor that was more a doctor that could look outside of different things. And we found a couple, but it's it was a difficult time, I'll have to say. Um and But I guess through the tragedy of everything we went through, I have to keep looking back of the beauty that came out of it. Of Mitchell was a life that was taken, but look how many lives that we touched and spared. And so that's how I look at it, in a sense that keeps my hope and my faith. Again, I go back to my strong faith and that I know I'll see him again. But yeah.
I think it's absolutely amazing and truly is inspiring. I mean, it's again what I mentioned earlier. It's the reason why I do this show, because when you get stories like this, and there's so many people going through similar situations or just tough things in life, and in those moments you are looking for motivation to keep going. You're like, well, what should I do? What is this? What is this test? What am I? What do you want? It's like you're just looking
Yeah.
for some answer, and then maybe in your life it is to inspire others and to give people hope through with this foundation, with the story. I mean,
Yes.
as you mentioned, it's going to become a movie, and I think it's a brilliant thing to happen because it kind of spreads that story even further and inspires more people. And you know as we mentioned earlier, maybe now more than ever, the world needs more hope and more
Oh yeah.
motivation to keep going. It's difficult when you see all these horrid things going on in the world. And maybe it's just because of the advent of the internet and the fact that we just have more access to information now. Because one thing that, I remember hearing adults say when I was growing up was that, the world has always been a terrible place, but now we just happen to know more about it. But I will say that while there is a lot of bad things going on in the world, there's a lot of good things going on in the world, wonderful things, beautiful things. And the work that you
Mm-hmm.
guys do is an example of that. The fact that people come
Yeah.
together and help each other out, especially people you don't even know, just strangers. It's
I know. It changes you. It's a beautiful thing to see. Like I said, just if communities could just all come together more of helping each other out and reach out to your neighbors. Some people are like, I don't even know my neighbors. Well, make an effort to say hello, whatever. It's just the community people, again, getting themselves out of themselves, and to when you take that baby step of people helping people. I mean, look at the people that came out to help the people in Ukraine. Oh my gosh,
yeah,
doing what they can to help. Coming out of the woodwork trying to help. Everyone feels helpless. How can we do? We're sitting here and what can we do? And I'm sure you see it on the streets of the UK of all the homelessness and the whatnot. What can
right.
we do? And what can we need to do something better here. What are we? It's it's just it can take one person. Again, it's that one. Make it yourself. Make it, just take that baby step. It'll start to transform you inside and out. Gets the focus off of you, gets the focus off of your problem, and then that kind of goes away as you begin to give to others.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, sometimes in the pursuit of something bigger than yourself, you actually then find the answers for your own life, which is
Exactly. Then you are
interesting.
blessed in return. That's what they call
Yeah,
blessings. That's a
interesting.
blessing in return. So that pleases God. Anyway, so you're strong, you're growing, and it's that spiritual quest. Again, we're made of flesh and blood, but we also are spiritual beings having a human experience. And so if you can think of it that way, you can just know that our spirits are strong and the body will decay, but the spirit lives inside each one of us. That's what you need to tap into and discover what drives that,
Absolutely.
right?
Couple of final quick fire questions for you, totally unrelated to everything else, but I love to ask every single guest this because you always get something different. What is happiness to you?
Mm. Oh, well, happiness for me is to spend long walks on the beach, walking the beach and just praising and praying and talking to my Father in heaven and just spending quiet time with him. That's when he fills me up to do the work that I do.
Beautiful. Very nicely put. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Mm. Live each day as if it was your last.
I've always wondered with this one, like I like the sentiment of it, but how is it possible to do so? I mean, is it more an attitude and less a kind of, activity based thing? Is it more kind of just the attitude thing? Like how exactly do you do
Attitude.
that?
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit of both. Live it like if it was your last day, if you had a diagnosis that you might not
Mm,
be here, and what would you do with your life? I would just, spend it with family, friends, be, just live it, live each moment. One of the best advices I got from my healing session is from the lady counselor told me, don't live in the past. She says, that's where regrets are, the what ifs, what could have been done, what should I have done. Don't live too far in the future. That's where anxiety is. And that's and the anticipation of everyone moving forward, but you're not. And the anxiety, you get anxious. She says, stay in the moment, stay in the present. This is all you have right now, this moment. Live in the moment. Like you and I were having this moment, a
yeah, no.
beautiful moment.
So someone said that actually recently, and I don't know if it was the comments section of YouTube or somewhere else, but someone said that they liked the show because it, it's a serious comment, but it made me laugh. Right? They said, "I like the show, and I like the fact that you seem genuine. Me, specific, look, I seem engaged in the conversation." And I laughed, but then I realized that I've watched a lot of podcasts where the person isn't really like engaged. They're kind of just like going through the motions, like, yeah, uh-huh, question, uh-huh, and then they just turn away. And maybe they're just kind of like, oh, great content, brilliant, you know. But like to me, that's
Mm-hmm.
just crazy. I mean, I don't know. Part of it is like, well, I'm having a conversation with another person, so of course I'm going to give you my attention. Secondly, it's I'm doing a show, so it's important to be engaged. And thirdly, like I love doing this. I really do. It's not the only chore part of it is all the editing and all that stuff. But to be honest, even that I'm not that bothered about. Like it's because it's all a process and it comes together, and then the final product is put out there, and then people enjoy that, and then the whole thing is rewarding. And
Yeah.
I mean, if nothing else, I
There's
get
your passion right there. So you found your passion.
oh
And it
no,
makes you alive. See, it's making you alive and feeling
acting makes me feel
purposeful.
alive. That's what the
Yeah.
real passion is. but no,
See?
but I love podcasting. It was different. This is different to my dream in life is to be a professional actor. And I'm pursuing that right now. But the podcast is it's a different kind of thing. It's like I guess it's in a way I don't want to compare, but it's kind of like what you're doing with your foundation. It's like my kind of baby. It's like the thing that I'm trying to grow and keep moving forward because I kind of feel like there's a bit more to this. Like acting is purely like a thing that I just want. I guess it's more like a selfish thing. It's something I want for my life. I love it, but the one thing that the thread that connects the two is that the one of the reasons why I do acting is because I love to entertain people. I love to bring entertainment or joy or laughter into people's lives. If I can do that, I feel like I've succeeded in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And with the podcast, it's similar but different. Like some episodes make people laugh. Sometimes it'll be a bit more somber. Sometimes there'll be like in a really inspiring episode like this one. There's always something that you take away from it. And I think that above all else is the main reason I keep doing this show. And it's fascinating because it's a journey. Like I it's 2 years now, and I think this is episode 175, and it just blows my
Right.
mind, like how many conversations there's been, how many life lessons, how much I've learned in this time. Like and it keeps going, and
I
Very
know that's
grateful.
exciting. Usually podcasts, they if they're not going to last, usually they go to about 100 episodes and then they fall away, you know? So
Yeah, that's true.
you kind of pass that that test of endurance again of doing that. So obviously again, that ripple effect, it's touching people obviously, and
Hope so.
that's a good thing. So that's wonderful that you are pursuing acting. I was just talking
Thank you.
to the producers of who would play us, and they're showing me different actors. You know, it's just like, oh my gosh. Well, I know. I will
Who
have to
knows?
send you my book, so make
Oh,
sure
well, thank you so much.
I can give you a digital copy. Would you like that? A
I would
digit,
love that. Thank you so much.
and
That'd
then
be
that
wonderful.
way you can just read it on your computer or your iPad or however you like to read it, and um,
Well,
all
thank
that.
you. Thank you so much. And a couple of final questions for you. What's the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
Biggest life lesson. At this point in my life, it's savoring the wonderful moments, the happy moments, and just taking more rest and time for myself to 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 be there for people, to be there for myself and my husband. Just, you know, now we're moving along in time here where it's just like you, it's like it's hard work and you want time for rest. Rest and recharging is important in order to do the work we do.
Right.
And just like anyone doing like your work, right? You need that time of um to do that.
Yeah, I struggle with that. I'm a workaholic, so when I have to force myself to take time to like, I love. Don't get me wrong, I love to sit and do nothing. Like, who doesn't, right? But at the same time, like, it's tricky sometimes. Like sometimes there's little things you got to do. Like, there's an expression I heard a few years back, which I think is perfect. It said, "You need to choose a rest day, or your body will choose it for you."
Oh yes.
And like, instead of being like, I don't know, sick for like a day or something, you'll be sick for a long time if you don't take that rest. So always
That's
put aside
so
some
important.
time to just do nothing.
That is true. That's why I say I purposely do that.
Mm,
I set that schedule Monday through Friday, and if I'm not doing an event on the weekends, I cherish my weekends. And people, you set those boundaries, and you just say,
yeah,
no, I'm not going to look at my phone. I am not going to do this. I'm going to spend time, like I said, on the beach, walking my dogs. You know, just spending that time filling yourself back up and healing and turning off all the noise that we hear every day, all the time, to reconnect with you. What's important.
absolutely. Do you have any upcoming projects or some final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, the upcoming project now is we're promoting the book out around the world. So that's my project right now. We're also looking for, I guess, we were looking for film producers. And like I said, we talked to one yesterday. They're interested in the book. So it's a process for that. That's a
Mm-hmm.
whole nother world I'm not familiar with. So we're looking for people to read the book and see if they'd be interested in it. Um, yeah, those are my two projects, two big projects, besides building the foundation and keep growing that. And that's enough projects.
No, well
Right.
done. Honestly, congratulations. I wish you the very best with it. I think it will definitely become a film, and it's an inspiring story. And I think that it would be great to see it on the big screen and to kind of just get it out to more people. Absolutely.
Yes.
Best of luck with it. And yeah, just a massive thank you for appearing on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you, and I wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you.
And to the listeners of the Christian Reeve podcast, thank you so much for listening. As always, be safe, be well, and I'll see you in the next one.